We've talked about COVID a little bit, and I wanted to ask, like, I feel like that was kind of the day in March where like the world kind of stopped. You know, the NBA shut down. Like I feel like as a commissioner, that must be just like not an enviable position to be in, just because like how do you handle all those schools and everything to go along with that? How did your job change from like February 2020 to like April 2020?
Yeah. Um, Great question. So I was just having this conversation today. If I'm really candid with you, and with anybody out there, we were terrified. Small colleges around the country and small college athletic programs, the first thing you realize is we are absolutely something that people love. We want to do this. We're passionate about it. Yes, there's coaches that it's their livelihood, but we're non-essential. And that's the thing that hits you first is this terrified, like, okay, what happens now? Pretty immediately, one of our schools dropped a couple of sports. Now, that was a move that was probably like 2 years down the line anyway. But COVID initially, in that first couple of months, what everyone kind of referred to it as the great accelerator. And that's really what happened as we got into it. um, what you what we quickly learned was twofold. There was no greater opportunity ever for leadership. And if you could weather that fear, and if you could step forward and lead, everybody would come with you, and collectively we were going to be more together than ever. And I think the second thing was our students needed to play. They wanted to desperately just let us get out there. And they were hungry for that. And because a couple of our schools dropped a couple of sports right away, what hit me was as a leader, people's jobs depend on this, but also students who came to a school for yes, I came here to get an education at this university, but in particular, the coach brought me to this university. How do we make sure that we keep things going for those individuals? Here's the break that I had that not as many people had. I was still fairly new, so I joke and say, as a commissioner, um, as time goes on, I mean, I made a decision this morning that one of our ads wasn't thrilled about, right? And that happens, and that's a part of it. Now, this particular decision this morning wasn't something that we won't get past, but as time goes, you take some bruises in this position. That is the best way to say it. I didn't have any of that. I was still absolutely in my honeymoon phase. And the relationships that we built because we were all rowing the boat together um, were just phenomenal and have helped us get through the year. So I had some advantages being new that I didn't. I realized pretty quick, hey, I don't have negative history with anybody. And right now that's going to serve us really well. So it's been an amazing ride. The fear went away. Probably you asked the perfect way. No, what was that first 2 months like? Mortified, right? But then you kind of strapped on your boots and said, all right, we're still here. Everybody's still wanting to go forward. Now, how do we do that? How do we successfully do that? So
Yeah, so I think oftentimes we look at COVID in a negative light, and obviously it is a big impact and devastating to a lot of industries. But you did mention the ability that it had to bring people together. Are there any other advantages that you've seen from COVID that you can take moving forward?
yeah, absolutely. I just this morning was working with our basketball coaches on a schedule, and what one of them said, and it's so right, is look, let's put this out there this way, but if we need to adjust it, we've proven this year we can adjust that very quickly later. And I think conference leadership for small college athletics has always been seen that you have to have everything answered really far in advance. Everyone in athletics, for the most part, coaches, commissioners, ads, all of us are pretty type A people. That's just who we are. We're coaching young people, and that's just who we are. We're driven. We're type A. Everything's got to be answered for. Everything has to be organized. COVID has taught us all that you can be more nimble than that. You can change things late. You can make better decisions. And honestly, it forced us to be creative on some things that I know we will keep. And so this isn't the way I wanted to learn that lesson. Um, but we did, right? It happened. And I think that's the attitude you have to take. It's all right. We did learn some things, and we'll not lose those lessons anytime real soon. So.
Back last year, and I still am, but I was freelancing for Cincy Magazine, and I was looking for story ideas, and that was tough because, there were no sports. And so I thought to, how conferences are reacting to COVID and things like that. And I reached out to you and it kind of asked you about, what your plans were for the spring season. And I don't even know if they were quite finalized then, but you basically, you, you declared, like, you were basically talking about how fall probably wasn't going to happen the same way, and that you might need to push sports to the spring. And then now a lot of sports were in the spring. Can you take me kind of through that process and what that was like?
Yeah, the first question we had to figure out. So you kind of lost last spring. Everything happened so quick, and you're in the middle of it, right? March 13th hits, and basically immediate trickle down from the Rudy Gobert thing, and then by a week later, basically everyone is kind of shutting things down. Like, there was no how do we do this? It was shutting down. And we as a group, I started meeting with our presidents really regularly at that point, and our athletic directors and faculty reps and everybody fairly regularly. And we didn't want to be first. We at that point said it's okay to not lead all the other 40. There's 44 total leagues in Division III. We'll let the 43 others. We don't have to be last. We need to make a decision at some point, but let's hang tight for a second and not be the first to say we're canceling everything. It became inevitable in the spring that everything was going to be canceled. Then you move forward. And I think it's fascinating because one of the things my associate commissioner and I said was they hired us to organize and conduct sports. And so I say to our presidents, you hired me to conduct sports. That's all I know my job is. And so I am going to figure out how we can do things until you tell me that we can't do this. Or until I hit a moral wall. There were points early where you didn't know if playing sports was going to put our athletes in a much more dangerous position. It became obvious, the science kept coming that the games themselves weren't problematic. It was the team bus travel, the team meals. I mean, science was helpful, and the NCAA having all the resources in the Division I science and all that was very helpful. So I had those two things. Until our presidents tell me no, or until I morally don't think we should be playing sports at any time, we're going to push forward. And we were ready to go with a few of our fall sports. We did not think we could play football last fall. We did not think we could play soccer. But we thought we could easily, safely run cross country. We could safely play women's tennis, women's golf. We were thinking about moving our men's tennis and golf to the fall for a minute. We thought we could safely play those sports. And then the NCAA came and said, don't try any of that in the fall. Well, we had all the plans together to do it. So then the question became, do you play your fall sports later in the spring? And ultimately, to our AD's credit, to our president's credit, to everyone's credit, they said, it's going to be exhausting, but all of those students want to play those sports. So what we've done is to take what we normally do in 10 months and our 20 sports that we normally do in 10 months time, and we compacted that into about 5.5 months. And we're almost, at the time we're filming this, we're almost done with all of our fall sports that we've now played in the spring. We finished out all of our winter stuff, and we're almost to what would be a normal spring here for the last bit. So that's kind of the progression we went through. And really, like I said, it was tell me when to stop. And our presidents kept saying, we'll support you. We'll spend the money for the testing. We'll adhere to what regulations the NCAA tells us we have to do, and you tell us if it gets dangerous. And so we just worked together really well like that. It was pretty awesome.